Words from the first chapter of the Gospel according to John. And the Word became flesh and lived among us, and we have seen his glory, the glory as of a Father's Son, full of grace and truth. From his fullness have we all received grace upon grace. The law indeed was given through Moses, grace and truth came through Jesus Christ. No one has ever seen God. It is the Son who is close to the Father's heart who has made him known. Let us bow for just a moment. In the midst of the rush and the running that is this season, grant us a moment of space and quiet where we may hear another word and learn another joy, which is life. In the Spirit of Jesus, Amen. Well, I might as well say it right up front. I want us to think this morning, and I want us to think about God. I'm not sure we're up to it. Overwhelmed as we are, your house is like ours, by parties and presents and meal preparations and cards and packaging and plane reservations. It all becomes a rather stressful and complicated affair, does it not? Catherine was desperately trying to get everything together for a large family gathering on Christmas Eve. As the hour approached, she became increasingly demanding, giving out orders like a drill sergeant: pick up your clothes, don't get anything out, put away your toys, don't touch anything. To prevent any further complications, she gave her 4-year-old daughter a little nativity set they had and told her to go play with that in her room. While Catherine was in the other room setting the table, she overheard a make-believe conversation in a very familiar tone of voice. Her daughter was saying loudly, "I don't care who you are, get those camels out of my living room." Rather hard to get theological in the midst of what we have made of this festival. In fact, I heard one woman complain, most of these Christmas carols are so distressingly theological. One 16-year-old young man was asked to take over the 4-year-old class for this Sunday. He prepared very conscientiously. On Saturday night, his mother asked him what he was going to do with the 4-year-olds. He said, "I'm just going to try and follow the lesson plan. Show them that each person is an individual with different potentialities and abilities, that each person is valued by God for these individual capabilities, and that there is value in difference as well as in conformity." He looked up at his mother, thought for a moment, and said, "Well, if that doesn't fly, we'll make Christmas ornaments." So we're probably not in the mood for deep thoughts about the divine this morning, but we better try. Because theology is what it's all about. Thinking about God. It's what it's all about in John's account. And theology has been big in the news these past months, in case you hadn't noticed. 4 handwritten pages of prayers and directions found in the belongings of Muhammad Atta, the hijacker who crashed the American Airlines plane into the North Tower of the World Trade Center. I quote, "Be happy, because the distance between this life and your joyful new life is short. You are doing a job which is loved by God, and you will end your day in heaven where you will join the virgins. Open your chest, welcoming death in the path of God, and utter your prayer seconds before you go to your target. Let your last words be, there is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is his messenger. Then, inshallah, you will be in heaven." Of course, these fanatics do not represent mainstream Islam any more than abortion clinic bombers represent mainstream Christianity. But they do lift up the reality that religion can be as demonic as it can be divine. And indeed, we do well to remember that there were times in the history of Christianity where people were indiscriminately slaughtered in the name of Jesus. These terrorists have made one thing at least crystal clear. The question is not whether we believe in God. The real life-shaping question is, what kind of God do we believe in? And clearly the God we believe in can be the product of our own dreams and ambitions, our lust for power and domination over others. The columnist Leonard Pitts, I think, puts it quite graphically. It occurs to me that God, especially in times of crisis, has more spokespeople than Amway. Some simply seek to divine the divine. Others claim to know his mind and motives as surely as if they had read his diary. But so many times what you discover is that people have created God in their image. They interpret him according to their petty biases and predispositions. They attribute to him their political party or ball team, their motivations and hatreds, their timetable and comprehension. So maybe it's good to be reminded sometimes that mortality cannot fathom eternity. So the first word of our particular faith, my friends, yours and mine, is a word about what we do not know. My thoughts are not your thoughts, nor my ways your ways, sings the ancient prophet. How unsearchable are his judgments, how inscrutable his ways. Who knows the mind of God, writes Paul the Apostle. And here John begins his gospel with the assertion, no one has ever seen God. I think there is a modesty about authentic faith that is grounded in the recognition that our little minds, and they aren't very big, limited as they are to space and time, cannot possibly begin to fathom, comprehend the mystery behind and beyond this incredible world. It's getting harder all the time, according to Annie Dillard. She writes, 10 years ago we thought there were only 2 galaxies for each human alive. Lately, since we've let loose the Hubble Space Telescope, we've had to revise our figures. Now we know there are 9 galaxies for every human being on this planet. And each galaxy harbors an average of 100 billion suns. And in our galaxy, the Milky Way, there are 69 suns for each one of us. 2 galaxies, 9 galaxies, 69 suns, 100 billion suns. These astronomers are nickel and diming us to death. But the good news of our faith is that God does accommodate himself to our humanity, to our minds, by making himself known in various subtle but tangible ways. He becomes real in and through creation and conscience. And above all, we believe in Jesus of Nazareth. In Jesus of Nazareth, God approaches us as flesh, so that within the limitations of human mind and life, we can relate to him, we can, in a sense, know him, we can follow him. Norman Wall tells this charming story. A woman and her son set off for the 11 o'clock Christmas Eve service, 11 p.m. The husband decided he would stay home, sit in his easy chair, and enjoy the evening unencumbered by this church stuff. As he watched his family leave in the car, he could see it was starting to snow. While reading the newspaper, the man thought he heard some knocking on the window, but then decided he was just hearing things. Then there was some more knocking, more like pecking, really. He opened the curtains, could see that the snow had intensified and the wind had really picked up. Then he could see a whole flock of birds on his lawn. A few had flown into his window, perhaps seeking shelter from the storm. It was as if they were all disoriented. He could see they'd be in trouble if they didn't find some kind of shelter. So he went out on the porch and caused a tremendous racket, hoping that they would fly off to some safety. But they wouldn't go. Then the man thought, well, I have a barn that might offer them some shelter. So he put on his jacket, went outside, pulled open the barn doors, put on a light, hoping to attract the birds inside to safety. But they wouldn't come. They huddled outside on the lawn. Food will bring them into the barn. So he went into the house, got some bread, went outside, tossed the breadcrumbs in a little path that might lead them to the barn. Still, the birds would not come. Then a kind of crazy thought occurred to the man. If I could become a bird just for a few moments, maybe then I could convince them that I care and that I'm trying to save them. And the bells of Christmas Eve rang in the background, because this is what John is telling his little flock a long time ago. The Word became flesh. He lived among us. We don't need to stand in judgment on any other faith. We can only say that for us, God has made himself real in Jesus of Nazareth in a way that we can relate to and know. But this does mean something interesting. It means that God does not come as God. God does not come as Lord of heaven and earth. He does not come as pomp and power, even as earthly ruler, to demand obedience and homage, to crush his enemies and elevate his chosen. He comes as one who said, I have not come to be served, like Caesar in far-off Rome, but I have come to serve. You see, precisely when God does enter the human story here, he hides himself in a humble carpenter, born of a peasant couple in an obscure village, tucked away in the corner of this world, so that to know God here in this one does not allow for arrogance and ambition, for the assertion of authority and power. If there's anything I think that speaks for the truth of the story, it is that this is not a God you and I would conjure up. To know God as he appears in this one does not allow for the projections of our wishes for rescue, our lust for power, our dreams of glory. So you see, what we really want in Christmas, what we want in life of God, is not always what we need. And that's surely what this babe grown tall came to underline and drive home. Not how to get what we want in life. We're pretty good at that on our own, you know. Even the restraint of our enemies in the name of justice. We can handle that. Rather, what we need is whatever it takes to bring us together. As friends and family, as neighbors, as world, to bring us together. The thought occurs that most of the trouble we have in life, the most mischief we cause between us, the miseries we suffer or inflict on one another, arise out of our difficulty in accepting the reality of our life as human beings together. Why is life together sometimes so distant or troubling or difficult? Isn't it because life is a scary thing? After all, skin is not very good armor. Injury and disease are omnipresent realities. The humans we have to deal with do not always seem to have our well-being uppermost in their minds. In a word, life together is life under threat of one sort or another. And the result is at least an uneasiness that can lurk there in the back of our minds. What does that pain forebode? What could that colleague or spouse be thinking about? And there are too many crazy drivers, aren't there? And so the thrust of much of our attention and energy seems a continual effort to climb out of this life, this dangerous, vulnerable life, in case you haven't noted. No, there's nothing wrong with vitamins and exercise and security systems or surgery. I have and had them all. What is wrong is the stress that arises out of our determination, above all else, to be safe, on top of things, in control. The stress that paradoxically is more likely to kill us than the wayward germ or the automobile. I mean, isn't this what is going on in Palestine today? Jews, Arabs, Christians, Muslims, I have friends among all of them, scared and seeking to secure their own existence from the hatred, the animosity of the other, struggling to save themselves even if it should mean eliminating the other. In a smaller way, isn't this precisely what is going on in many a home today? Not so grandiose or cruel, perhaps. Many attempt to withdraw on behalf of one's peace of mind, to hold at bay the anxiety and anger that comes because another is there. So along comes one of us, truly one of us, who seems thoroughly at home in his own skin, who talks about paying attention to larks and lilies, who seems to truly enjoy being here, even though he has no Visa card or Social Security. His vulnerability is daily, his enemies many, and yet he embraces human life and lot as the place to be. He loves both his friends, clumsy and confused, and the needy strangers who cross his path. He gives himself thoroughly to both the joys and sorrows of life together in a fragile but beautiful world. In a word, he trusts himself to the truly human existence that we often run from in fear. And in so doing, you see, he tries to reconcile us to who we are and where we are and with whom we are. Perhaps that is above all why we've come to sense that in him we're faced with a spirit that is somehow bigger than our poor human spirits. In his cheerful and trusting embrace of human life, we are in touch with the divine, and we're led bit by bit toward peace with one another. The words of Mother Teresa echo this word become flesh. There's much suffering in the world, very much, she writes. The material suffering is suffering from hunger, suffering from homelessness, from all kinds of disease, but I think the greatest suffering is being lonely, is feeling unloved, just having no one there. I've come more and more to realize that it is being unwanted that is the worst disease that any human being can ever experience. So I don't look at the masses as my responsibility. I look at the one in front of me. I can only love one person at a time. I can only feed one person at a time, just one. But I think you get closer to Jesus by being closer to that one. As he said, whatever you do for the least of my brethren, you do it to me. So I begin. I pick up one person. One person is only a drop in the ocean, but if we don't put a drop in the ocean, there is one drop less. Same thing for you, same thing in your family, same thing in the church where you go. Just begin. One. That's the way love works. That's the way love becomes flesh. But it doesn't have to be Mother Teresa in the slums of Calcutta. There are the words, remarkable words of Mike at the memorial service for his wife Neely, who was in one of the planes that hit the towers. His remarkable tribute, I don't know how he did it, is too long to do justice to here. She was a woman of faith, of family, of church, but above all of caring. Many of you have asked me how you can help, he says near the end. I ask that you use Neely as a source of inspiration. Grab a piece of her and take it with you and live it. I want to share with you a simple list of items that Neely tried to live, demonstrated, taught me. All I ask is that you listen for one and take it with you. Smile, say hello, say please, say thank you, say you're welcome, buy flowers, pray, laugh out loud, sing songs, especially if you don't know the words. Keep your word. Turn off the TV and talk. Send thank you notes before you forget. Meet and greet your neighbors and strangers. Enjoy your vacation. Say, I'm sorry. Do one thing at a time. Say, I love you more. I think there too the Word has become flesh in Neely and lived among us. I think there's no doubt what kind of God she served. Someone very much like Jesus, who touched the blind, who laughed with the outsiders at parties, who listened to the lonely, who washed his friends' feet and wished them all joy, whose love was caring and giving and touching, whose love was flesh all the way to the end. And if you stop and reflect, I dare say you'll find with me that the deepest joys in life have been found there. Not in getting what we want, but getting in touch with the God who comes in Him. The gift of a few good hours together in the warmth of acceptance of real love, no matter the troubles and tears that life can dump on us. So let us resolve amid all the festivities and fuss to be open to the one thing needful, being the Word in flesh, shared among us. Amen.